Hey guys, BSIC here again. And I just want to talk about this real quick. Now, of course, you guys have always, I would say kind of heard about this stigma towards, millennials. I am a millennial, by the way. And it's funny because most of those stereotypes associated with millennials, I've never stuck to, I would say, most of them. Even though it seems like a lot of people, especially older people, think this way about millennials. However, this is not necessarily what I'm talking about today. What I'm talking about today is how fucking unlucky millennials like myself have been. I mean, Jesus Christ. They have rated lately that millennials are the most unlucky generation in American history. At least possibly. I mean, think about it. First, when I was younger, when I was just getting out of high school, in what 2008 2009, there was a recession and nobody was getting a job. Nobody was hardly ever getting a job when I got out of high school, and I didn't have that many work skills at the time. In fact, I had hardly any work skills at the time. And I remember talking to a lot of my friends at the time that were trying to get jobs. They weren't getting jobs. I remember there was even a person that I knew who had actually went to college and got a degree, and they still couldn't even get a fucking job at McDonald's. That's how fucking bad it was at the time. That even if you got a college degree, you couldn't even get a fucking job at the time. So I mean, at least in many cases, it seemed like. Now it was especially bad here in Iowa. My God. I mean, as is, there isn't enough jobs here to, deal with the population. And so when the recession happened, I remember at the time, it was just terrible. Now, eventually, I managed to get a job in like what, I think 2019 maybe, luckily. But it was just a minimum wage job. And I was stuck there for like 2.5 years. I was, of course, only planning on being there for a year, but I was stuck there for 2.5 years because I just couldn't find anything. I kept on applying. I applied to all of the restaurants in the neighboring towns. I couldn't find jack shit. I didn't even get a call back for an interview at the time. That's if I had any. I hardly got an interview for a job at the time. I mean, I couldn't even get a job that was like fucking $10 an hour at the time. Even with my experience at the restaurant that I was working at the time, I could not. I was like the lead, dishwasher guy, and I was the backup cook. I remember at the time, and I couldn't get a job. I had the skills to do it, for at least that time period to get a different job, but people just were not fucking hiring me. They wouldn't even give me an interview, like I said. And that's the way it was for years. Until I, of course, like I said, went to a temp service and started finally getting experience. I'd say a year later after that, finally started getting work experience, But it was also funny experiencing all the people that sometimes just acted as if there wasn't even a recession sometimes, because not every business was actually hit by the recession like a lot of people think. It's just that they started using that as an excuse not to hire people, actually, is what was really going on, I eventually learned. And when I would sometimes go into these workplaces, people would expect some of the weirdest shit from me because of my age. I was 21 at the time, and they would just expect all of this shit from me. And I'm just like, hey man, for the past 2 or 3 years now, I've been just struggling to fucking find a job. And then I've led up here at this temp service just to fucking get any experience from any kind of work. I mean, it was just shitty at the time. Oh my god. And then finally, a few years later after that, it quieted down quite a bit, and getting a job was kind of easier. But of course, for many millennials like myself, we're getting to that point where in 2020, 2019, I would say a lot of millennials were kind of finally starting to keep up. They were starting to get better paying jobs, etc. But then guess what happens? The fucking pandemic. The fucking pandemic happens. And then guess what happened to all those millennials that were just about to get, a better position at their job? They had to move back into their parents and they got laid off. Now, of course, not all of them got laid off, and it didn't happen to every millennial. But what happened to me personally early last year, when, of course, we got furloughed and we lost our night shift at work due to the COVID hit and pandemic, which is still kind of going on. Like, I was going to become a press operator at work. I was training to be a press operator. I was going to move up in the workplace. But then again, guess what happened? Pandemic. We lost night shift, which is the shift that I was working on. And when I came on the morning shift, I couldn't even be roll tender anymore, which is the position that I was currently at. And then now I'm back to being a stacker, which is the lowest end job there. I mean, it's just funny. Now I'm a stacker again at work. I've been a stacker again basically for a year now. At least most of the time. Sometimes they'll put me in the back to roll 10, but I think I get the points. Now I'm just a stacker again, even though my title is still roll tender. And thankfully, at the very least, I'm getting the same pay that I was getting when I was a roll tender. Now, if they downgraded my pay, I definitely wouldn't be working there anymore. Let me tell you. I would be fucking pissed and just fucking leave. That's what I would have done. But seriously, man. I mean, just think of how unlucky this generation has been. I mean, and even calculated the average earnings of our parents in the past was even more, a lot more so actually, in the past when my parents were younger, like myself, or even younger. So you get the point. Like the average earnings, even with inflation, were almost twice the amount. Almost twice the amount, even with a fucking inflation. I mean, Jesus Christ. I mean, when I first saw the figures of the average, paid and money that people were getting back then, I'm just like, oh my fucking God. Would I just love to get paid like that nowadays and have the kind of benefits that my parents used to have growing up? Now, I remember when I was a kid and I was still in grade school and everything, that things were doing pretty well back in the 90s, And you could literally just get a job. You could do a fucking crappy interview at a job and get the job. But nowadays, everybody's fucking picky as hell of who they, bring to work nowadays. And lots of times, they don't even have enough workers to do the fucking job. I remember they used to have like they used to have too many people at work at these workplaces sometimes. But now they don't even most of the time. No, nowadays they don't even have enough most of the time. I mean, it's just fun. It's just hilarious seeing it nowadays, how people react to nowadays. Because it's just nothing compared to how things were back then. It is, even to this day, so much harder to get a higher paying job nowadays versus the way it was back when I was a kid. It used to be so much fucking easier. You also didn't have to work as hard either. You also didn't have to do as long hours, etc. I mean, I just always thought it was so funny how it's just like, do you want your younger generations to fucking fail? I mean, are you guys just trying to make your younger generations fail or something? Because you're doing a really good job at it if you are doing this on purpose. I mean, you're doing a really good job if you're seriously doing this on purpose to millennials. Because it has just been so ridiculous that all of these millennials are just moving back in with their parents like they are. Who whose parents are probably like in their 50s and 60s by now. I mean, some of them are probably at retirement age. They have more fucking money than their fucking kids at retirement. I mean, this is just fucking insane, man. Like, why does it have to be like this? You know? Why does it have to be like this? Because it could be so much fucking simpler than this. It really can. And they call this the best country in the world. But they sure as heck aren't acting like it sometimes. But I think that that's enough said. But at least things aren't all bad. But man, with that being said, of course, I'll end this video. Any more questions, comments, etc., just lay down. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.